Gets much worse. Gets much, much worse. Welcome to the Audiobook Club podcast, hosted today by myself, Jason Sharkey, and I'm joined by my other hosts, Michael and Jonathan. Stephen is unfortunately not with us at the moment, but he is due to join us at some stage. So today we are covering Ready Player One, written by, is it Ernest Cline?
Yep.
Yes, Ernest Cline. And this is episode 24, I believe. So I think we didn't really do like a guess or anything the last time round, because I think Michael and Stephen had already read or listened to the books previously. I actually didn't realise when I picked it, but I think Stephen might have subconsciously planted the book in my head, because I sort of listened after like announcing that I wanted to pick Ready Player One. I then listened back to the previous podcast where Stephen mentioned he was currently listening to Ready Player One, which I clearly didn't pick up on at the time. So I think that's why I was sort of led down that route of listening to it. It was also, I actually already owned the book and its sequel. Like, they were both already in my library, just I never got around to listening to them. So that was probably my main reasons. I think it was just, to say, sort of inceptioned into my head a wee bit by Stephen. So Ready Player One it's quite a recent book. It's written in 2011. By, as I mentioned, Ernest Cline, and it's a sort of dystopian story set in the year 2045, and it follows Wade Watts on his search for James Halliday's Easter egg in the virtual reality game of the OASIS, which, the discovery of that would lead to him sort of becoming the owner, inheriting the fortune, Halliday's fortune. That's the sort of main summary, the main sort of plot point of the book. Yeah, like it was just a book. I think it might have been one of the very first books I ever actually bought on Audible, but I just never got around to listening to it. It was just sitting there at the very bottom of my library. So much so that I even bought the sequel before even reading or even attempting to listen to the original book. So they're both just sort of sitting there ready to be listened to. So I finally decided it was time to get round to it. I don't know why exactly I chose that time, apart from, as I say, must have just been Stephen chatting away a bit. But I'm glad I did get round to it finally. I hope you guys feel the same, but I suppose I'll find out very soon. I know this is Johnny's first time with the book, so I'll be interested to hear what he thinks. I don't know how he's going to go, but find out soon. Haven't asked you to introduce yourself. Michael, Jonathan, do you want to say hello? I've finished rambling.
Hello.
What's up?
So yeah, I mean, I've sort of briefly said that I was quite glad I chose the book. Michael, Jonathan, would you like to give us a sort of brief summary of your experience with the book before we get into it?
Yeah, like you mentioned there, I never read this book. I had heard about it, I think more from, I have heard, listened to a few podcasts where, specifically programming ones, where obviously the programmers are usually quite nerdy and stuff, and always recommend this book. But I remember the movie being quite popular back. I think the movie came out in 2018. And I remember there was a lot of hype about that. So I knew it was some kind of virtual gaming experience, but I didn't actually know what the actual plot was in terms of hunting down this Easter egg and stuff. So I thought, that was quite an interesting plot. High level, I think I really enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed all the I'd say there's a lot of shout outs to nerdy culture in this book. A lot of references to everything from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings to 80s music, 80s rock, things like that. Basically everything that I'm sure that all of us on this podcast love. So this had a little bit of everything. I do really enjoy the actual setting. The fact that this guy, the main character, Wade Watts, is poor and stuff in the real world, and this is his escape to this place where he can be anyone, reinvent himself. I really think that is so accurate to how the world is right now. You've got all these depressed teenagers who basically go onto their Xboxes or PCs or whatever and, you know, adopt these very confident personas of whoever they want to be online. Obviously that like has its own problems with, you know, cyberbullying and whatnot and stuff and all that, but I do think it's also a very good thing, you know, for people being a bit more social and stuff like that. But I think obviously the virtual kind of gaming right now as it stands it's quite impressive, but it's nowhere near what this is described in this book. But I do think one day it will be, you know, where it's at the point where it's you cannot distinguish reality from the game. And I also like how they talk a lot about, you know, that the thing was, although it has become like a game thing, like I'm just picturing it like it's basically big like Fortnite kind of like I was about to say Casino Royale, what do you call it, the Battle Royale, you know, world of like avatars fighting each other, but it's actually like was invented I think initially for like education and stuff like that, and it's like all the kids basically now will get, you know, a good education and have access to every book like ever written and stuff. It's all been like catalogued in this OASIS. So I really like the whole world that was built and created, and obviously it's from a programmer perspective, so there's a lot of programmer tropes which I also really enjoyed. But yeah, I'm looking forward to digging more into it, so I really enjoyed the book.
That's good. I really thought you would have went either way with this book, so I'm glad to hear you quite enjoyed the experience, definitely. Michael, I know you had read it before, so any more thoughts, anything else you want to add to what Johnny said there?
Yeah, just I want to start by apologising about any background noise that might be picked up while I'm talking. There's like a scraping kind of thing going on outside. Don't know if my mic is picking it up, but it's very, very loud. I don't know what kind of external works are going on or something, but apologies if that has been picked up on my mic. I was trying to like source the sound there now, but I don't know what the hell it is. But anyway, so just to give like the listeners a peek behind the curtain, usually in our group chat we don't really discuss the books. We try to avoid that, I think mostly to keep the discussion on the podcast as organic as possible. But you were contemplating picking another book that you revealed, which was This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, which is a book I really love. That would have definitely been a 5-star review for me, and you would have been making fun of me again at the end of that episode for doing another 5-star review. But this book, however, I am quite lukewarm on, to be honest. I have a lot of issues with like Ernest Cline's writing, and I think the 80s references, that's just it grates on me a lot about this book. I think it's a great premise. Like the idea, I think I heard the author describe it as like, what if Willy Wonka made like a game, instead of being so into chocolate, he was like into video games, and he dispersed all these tokens throughout his world, and then you could navigate through them to discover them in that way. I think that's a great idea, and the setup is great. I'm just not a fan at certain points of how the idea is realized, and I'll get more into it as we get more into the review. Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential. I think Wil Wheaton does an excellent job with the narration, but there's certain things that drive me crazy. Like there's a paragraph where he talks about all the stuff that he's done. He's like, I've read every book by this author, that author, this author, that author, this author. I've listened to every album by this band or this artist or this band, and he's like, I've watched this sitcom 4 times, I've watched this sitcom 3 times, I've watched this movie 65 times, and I'm like, there's no way this guy has done all that. It really irritates me, because I'm just like, nobody has time to do all that. And that just really, really got on my nerves. And I think, I know I have some cheek saying this, because I picked Name of the Wind, which has the classic Mary Sue of Quoth. I think, what's the main character in this again? What's his name again?
Is Wade Watts.
Wade Watts. I think Wade is also a bit of a Mary Sue. Like he kind of, to solve a lot of, when it, like a lot of the conflicts happen and a lot of the tasks, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I spent months playing this game, and he just kind of says that, and that's just how a lot of these conflicts are solved. It just seems very easy for him, and it doesn't create a lot of tension within the story. I think it's just too easy. There are parts of this which I think is really good. As I said, the premise, like the world building is actually pretty good. As Jonathan said, it's a very well realized world with the video game, and it kind of relates to a lot of real world stuff going on. One thing Jonathan didn't bring up is Zuckerberg's metaverse, which is like sort of what I think he's trying to go for, something like this, like a complete immersive society within technology. But and this realizes this, and there's a lot of imagination behind it. I just think it leans very heavily on referencing other things instead of, you know, using its own creativity or realizing its own bringing something new to the table or something fresh.
I would just like to chat about a few of the things you said, Michael. Some things that I would most definitely agree with. He is 100% to Mary Sue. If anything, he's worse than Koth, in my opinion, in that regard. Yeah, there's just a lot of, I'll just solve this problem because I did all my research beforehand and I know exactly what I'm doing. Or like, I can 100% this game, no bother. Like, because I've played it loads, but I've watched this movie loads and I've done this loads, and I've also socialized my friends and gone to school, and I would 100% agree that there are times in this book where I'm like, oh my god. I would say there are parts where when he finally doesn't have the answers all to himself, and again actually in the sequel, because I have actually managed to finish the sequel in this time, there's a large section where it's like, I actually never actually engaged with this book in this area for other reasons which I'll not spoil, but Stephen probably knows what I'm talking about. And there's a lot more relying on other people to help him out in the sequel. So I think it is maybe something that Ernest Cline does try to address a bit in the second book. And also just something that Johnny mentioned about like hearing about it in podcasts. I feel like I used to hear about this or read about this book a lot on like Reddit back in the day. I feel like people on Reddit absolutely love this book, Headed Up, which I think is why I have bought it previously. I think it's why it was sitting in my library for so long. Probably just because everybody on Reddit raved about it for years, and I was like, I must give it a go. So Stephen, we've got Michael and Johnny's thoughts there, just general sort of summaries of the book. I'll just fill you in. Johnny was quite positive. Michael was a bit more middling, I would say. If you could give us your thoughts, I know you've listened to both the book and the sequel, but if you can give us just your general thoughts on Ready Player One.
First of all, I really like the book. It's one that I would come back to every couple of years maybe. I like the film too, but I mean it kind of panders to everything that I would like, all the sort of tropes and internet culture that I like, and a lot of the games that I would play and stuff gets referenced and stuff like that. So I mean it definitely scratches that itch of mine for a bunch of different itches of stuff. That being said, there are a bunch of cringy moments in it that I find hard to listen to. There's particularly one scene where he's talking to Artemis like in text chat, and it's pretty grim, like. And it goes on for about 5 minutes or maybe even longer. But then I think I caught the tail end of what Michael was saying there, and I sort of agree about how he's able to solve everything, and it's kind of mad. And I think what you were kind of touching on, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, is that like there's not he's like watched all these shows and played all these games and gone to school and socialized with his friends, and it's like, how does he fit all the time in to do all those things?
Yeah. And then
which
also
is definitely something that I thought of at some point.
Also survives in the real world as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I've binged the TV show of of like 50 plus episodes, which some of these shows that he describes would have, and it takes a long time. Like, so.
Yeah, he says how he's read every like book by like certain number of authors, and like
I know, yeah.
And like there's like some of these authors, like one of them he mentions is Stephen King, who's like written over 70 books, like, and huge, some of them huge books, like.
And he's seen some of these films like 20, 30 times, and it's like,
it's ridiculous.
It's a bit ridiculous, but at the same time, I kind of put it to one side. Like I'm kind of it's one of those moments where, like, rare moments where I'm fine with something being impossible to serve the plot. Like I find a lot are impossible or really silly, I find that a lot with stuff like Doctor Who and stuff as well. It's really stupid, but it's fine, you know. But yeah, I mean, overall positive on the whole thing, apart from those few small things.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's definitely a book you have to sort of just suspend your belief a wee bit, just to sort of get through it, because there are times where you do really rise a wee bit listening to it. And you touched on the movie. I don't think anyone else had mentioned the movie yet, but that's definitely something I would like to discuss at some stage.
I knew coming onto this this review that I would probably be the most negative on it, and I did not want to take this role, but it's the first time on the podcast I've ever had to do that, so I'm not so taking excited. Any joy in this, and that I do not like it at all. It's very uncomfortable.
It's not very nice, is it?
For me, for that one book that you made us read. Can't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
Well, you finally got your turn.
Negative Michael.
Yeah. It's about time.
This is my villain arc.
I'm surprised. I thought you would have liked it because you read it before, but I thought Johnny would have been the one that would have. As I say, I'm really surprised to hear Johnny actually really enjoyed it. I thought he could have gone either way. I thought he would have gone the Mr. Negative way.
I don't know. Hey, I like this is right up my street. Like it's like programming stuff and it's gaming. Like it's like the two things I do.
Yeah, there's just some bits in it that I just really was listening to. I was like, oh, Johnny's going to hate this for some reason, but. Here we are. You're probably the most positive of all of us by the sounds of it, so happy days.
I was surprised because Michael was telling me this at a friend's house one night there. We were playing cards. He was saying he sort of hinted about like not liking it. Didn't say it outright, but he was kind of hinting at it. I was like, that's really surprising. I thought you would have loved this. So interesting.
And just, Johnny,
we'll get
you were
onto
with
it
me
more as we go. And
we'll just take it apart as you go. You say, Michael.
Yeah, I've got more issues with it, and I hate doing this because I hate when somebody really loves a thing, and I don't like being like the buzzkill or saying like
it's a review podcast.
You shouldn't like that.
Yeah.
No,
Michael,
I know.
This is what it's all about. Like it's been far too long. You've not hated one of the books yet. I mean, I wouldn't say you said you hated it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
felt negatively. Like this has been.
I hate shitting on things that people like, but here we are.
Yeah.
Shit away, man. Shit away. We'll see. He'll still rate it a 3.5.
I'll give it a 4.9.
We'll see.
4.9.
Right, let's get stuck into it here. I'm just going to get started with a summary. I've sort of broken it up into chunks. Some chunks maybe slightly bigger than others, but just the way it works out. I didn't realize there's 39 chapters as I was sort of going through this to prepare. Yeah, we'll get stuck into it. So the book starts off. It's narrated by Wil Wheaton, but you know it's in the sort of first person of Wade Watts. I'm pretty sure, or for most of it is, anyways. So it starts off him just giving us sort of describing what happened to how Halliday died, how he passed away. Talks us through the OASIS, the sort of big open world immersive video game that we're playing, and the sort of in the year, I think it's 2041 or 2045, I think I might have said earlier.
2044, I think.
Yeah, and Halliday's death, he announced that he was having a contest to decide who can have his sort of fortune, the $240 billion. He announces this in Anorak's invitation. Anorak was Halliday's character in the OASIS. And then Wade Watts just sort of gives a brief overview of Easter eggs, and I believe to sort of talk about like the first Easter egg being in a video game called Adventure. So the plot was, the whole idea is that they tell us we're on the lookout for 3 keys that will open 3 gates that will then lead us to the Easter egg, James Halliday's Easter egg. And then the website, James Halliday's website, changes to a scoreboard. And this website also includes very important thing to the plot is the Anorak's almanac. I've actually never googled what an almanac is, to be honest, but I just assumed it was like a big,
book of everything.
Yeah, big tome.
I think.
So yeah, that was 2041. So then 4 years on is where the story starts, really, where people are still sort of looking for the book. They're called Gunters or Egg Hunters, and then we start off with Wade's point of view and what's happening in the search. It gives us like a sort of brief overview of Wade's just living with his auntie and her partner, her boyfriend, because Wade is an orphan. I think his dad was killed in like a car accident, something like that, and his mom overdosed. And they're living in these sort of trailers that are piled on top of each other, stacked on top of each other, so just they're referred to as the stacks. The aunt has issues. She sort of takes Wade's laptop and pawns it off for money. So he runs away to his hideout. He puts on his haptic gloves and his visor, and he enters the Oasis. And the book sort of starts from here, with the opening words of, Ready Player One. So that was the opening of the book. I personally actually found the opening very strong. It really roped me into it. Just the sort of whole summary of, like, this is what's going to happen. This is the competition. That actually really pulled me in. Anyone want to give some thoughts? Who would like to go first?
I think it definitely does draw you in. The start of this book, there's for me anyway, there's a lot of stuff that I would like to happen, like the whole having a sort of VR world or experience that would be like the Oasis would be class. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but for loads of different reasons. But yeah, I think I would love that. So hearing all about it and stuff is it really, again, scratches an itch for me. But then also the whole Wade stuff, like the out of the Oasis stuff, I think is really interesting too. And it's like, okay, so we have a competition and he's like, basically per, right? So it's almost like a hero's journey sort of thing, where he's kind of got nothing and he goes out to win it all. So yeah, I like it.
It's just a Harry Potter journey, really, isn't it?
But if you read between the lines of Harry Potter, he's actually mental and in an asylum the whole time.
See about for book 3.
Yeah. I don't have any massive issues with the opening, to be honest. I think it's pretty solid. As I said in my summary, I think the premise itself is pretty intriguing, and most of this is just setting up the premise and introducing it, so I think it's all pretty solid. There is a lot of info dumping, and there's a lot of exposition for world building. It's not the ideal way to do that. I think you ideally want to show it within the world rather than telling the reader, that climate change happened, whatever, and going into long paragraphs of detail. This is the history of that. This is the history of that. I know that I've read other reviews where a lot of readers had issues with that info dumping and exposition. I personally thought it was okay because I thought it was pretty interesting. As I said, the world building sometimes in this book is pretty good. And I think the actual justification for the Oasis and all is pretty interesting. So it had my attention and everything. And the introduction to Wade, he seems like a pretty engaging character at the start, when he's alluding to, you may have heard of all these events. Well, this is the real story. It's a great couple of first lines to draw you in. I do think at this part, I have a few issues with Wade already because, especially that like atheist rant, it's just, he comes across a bit to me like a little internet edgelord. And as somebody who was on the early internet and spoke to a lot of people like that, they're not my favorite kind of people. So already I kind of was against Wade, but I was like Ernest Cline, he's doing a good job here capturing what a 17-year-old sounds like. I think it's written in a good kind of 17-year-old voice. But yeah, I think I started to get a little bit against Wade in certain parts of this part, but mostly it was solid for me.
Thank you, Michael. Johnny, anything else to add?
No, yeah, I enjoyed opening stuff. I like the background of the Oasis and the whole challenge, and of obviously like Wade's kind of setting. I think I only watched the start of the movie. Well, unfortunately, I didn't get finished, but it was something I already didn't really like about the movie was the fact that it just kind of skips all that. It gives you the overview, but it doesn't kind of go on days like him being poor and stuff like that. I think he just wins the first challenge within the first 20 minutes of the movie starting. So yeah, I preferred the backstory of him and him struggling through the whole backstory of he's living with his aunt and stuff. Obviously, I think they do make jokes like that, he's called Wade Watts because it's his parents thought that it was a superhero name, which obviously Marvel do a lot of alliteration.
Yeah.
And then obviously he's got the same backstory that most of them have, where his parents are dead and he's living with his aunt or uncle or whatever. Yeah, so I thought it was quite funny that they just chose, to kind of go with that trope. But no, yeah, I enjoyed the opening of the book.
Thank you. Well, I don't really have much more to add, but yeah, the next few chapters are, as Michael said, just lots of info dumping, and I will do my best to summarize that now. So yeah, once Wayne's put his OASIS visor on, he logs in to his avatar. We meet for the first time a character called Parzival, or Z, as they're sometimes affectionately referred to. And he's logged into the sort of school world, the high school world, which I believe is called Ludus. Just gives us a lot of information about the sort of the villains of the story, the Sixers, they're called. These are the IOI employees. He also sort of talks about this blog that he's reading from one of the Gunters by someone called Artemis. And then we sort of meet the character H before the class starts. They sort of go to this basement chat room, which is where H and Z spend a lot of time. We get a bit of sort of background about H, like how they're actually a bit more, they actually have a bit of money in the game. They're quite competitive. Get a lot of chat about 80s trivia, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of 80s trivia, which, well, I mean, none of us grew up in the 80s, we're all 90s babies, but I know some more than other of us sort of engaged with the 80s music scene, at least.
I'm a big fan of the 80s.
Yeah, I know Johnny is too. Yeah, and then we meet the bully called iRock, who's a sort of minor character, but they do something. And then we just get a bit of information about Wade's worries about like sort of finishing up school, the financial issues in the real world and the OASIS, because he's skint in both. He can't really, he's sort of stuck on this planet. He can't really fast travel or teleport anywhere. So that was the sort of next few chapters. Personally, it was just a lot of, that's what Michael's already said, just like a lot of info dumping, just to sort of catch us up to speed really on who these people are and what's going to happen. I think it could have been done better, personally. I think it was just a lot of, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. But what do you lads think? Anything else? Stephen, if you want to go first.
I mean, I thought it was fine. I don't really have anything much to say about it. Didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Michael, Jonathan?
So as I said as well to you guys in the last podcast, I had read this before, and I already knew that I was quite lukewarm on it then. And I was kind of, when I was getting to this point, I was kind of thinking, was I too harsh on this book the first time I read it? Because this has got me engaged so far. And as it went on, when he met his friends and the 80s references started, my eyes started twitching a bit. And I was like, okay, this is where it starts to get a bit annoying for me. And it's the fact that it's just like the references, I don't think, they're just kind of name dropped. They're not really integrated into the plot that much. The way, like, if you use the movie for an example, it does a bit of a better job of integrating it, such as like using the Overlook as a setting. I still think the movie has a lot of the same issues as the book. There's a lot of like, oh, this planet was like Rivendell, and this planet was, like this other, it was like Tatooine or something like, and it just doesn't really evoke a good picture in my head. It's like me telling a horror story where I'm like, he was running through a maze like at the end of The Shining, and then there was a monster who looked like a clown. He was like Art the Clown or Pennywise, and then he had like big knives like Freddy Krueger. Like, I can reference all these things of like scary things, but that doesn't make it scary if I don't create it myself. And it doesn't evoke anything, and that's just my problem with a lot of it. I wish he had like created planets that, I'm happy for him to have created planets based on Rivendell, but it doesn't bring a picture into my head, even though I get the references, and like, I think sometimes it's satisfying to have, oh, I get that reference, but I just don't think they were integrated that well. And when there's just this constant onslaught of them, and every character makes it their personality, but it's completely justified in the plot why they do this, because it's this egg hunt for a lot of money. So of course people are going to make this their entire lives, but just hearing them interact with each other and like, oh, you don't know this random piece of trivia from the 80s, like these big gatekeepers to other people, and look down at them, and I'm like, everybody's an edgelord, and it's there's just, I don't connect with the characters at certain points, and yeah, it was fine, but this was the start of it for me, where I was like, oh yeah, this is what I didn't like about this book.
Just to go after what you said there, I found that a few times where some of the name drops that I didn't know what it was. I found myself looking up a few things different times. Particularly, I seem to remember looking up the music of Oingo Boingo, which I think gets mentioned a few times. Didn't like it, but anyway. But then a lot of the other references that I did find myself having that like, oh, I know that one sort of feeling. So maybe that's why I liked it so much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Johnny, have you anything else to add to Michael's scathing review? Or
I mean, I understand what Michael's saying, but I think like this is like this is the point in this book, is like obviously it is just like a glorified kind of reference thing. Obviously the challenge is to kind of understand this like Halliday's life and kind of like all his references, and he's just like a super nerd, so like it is just about references. I understand, yeah, it's not really building anything of its own, this book, because yeah, everything is literally a reference or is like a recreation of someone else. But I think it just works here because it's like it is so like that's the only thing it is. Like if it was like a mix, I don't know if it would work as good. Like if they did like some references and then some own stuff, like I think you either have to go full reference or full not, But yeah, I kind of liked it. I don't really have a problem with. Yeah, I mean the characters in terms of like introducing to like H, and I don't know, we don't get the Artemis yet. But H anyway and stuff, like I thought the kind of dynamic they have, like Wade or what's he called, Parzival and H are like, it's just kind of like two online bros, just giving each other stick and things like that. When there's that character that comes in, I think, to the basement and he's just a pure dickhead, and it's like that guy's just like that because this is an online presence, and that's just the way we online dickheads go on. So like I just maybe got it a lot more because I used to be one of those people that would be on Xbox not chat rooms, but like Xbox parties or whatever you called them with randomers online and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of like connected, I think, a bit more with this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I think Ernest Cline, I think he did a really good job of realism with their interactions. It's just, I really wish Wade was a bit more of a humble character, and amidst all of this, it would have made it a bit more tolerable for me. But and I absolutely hate Halliday. Everything we learn about him, I absolutely despise that man.
Read the second book.
Read the second book, Michael.
Right.
You'll still hate him then, but you'll be vindicated.
There's a moment where they talk about the fact he fires people for not getting his references, and I'm just like, how pathetic could you be? That is just unforgivable. I don't care if he has Asperger's or whatever Ernest Cline said to justify it. That is completely pathetic.
No, I'm telling you, read the second book, it gets worse.
Gets much worse. Gets much, much worse.
The main plot point of the second book is much worse.
Correct.
Essentially, Halliday's a dick. What if Halliday wasn't?
Maybe I might enjoy the second book then.
Maybe.
We'll save that for next year, Michael. I'll pick it just for you.
Thanks. Thank you.
If we ever do the sequel to Hitchhikers, I'm 100% picking this book. As I sort of mentioned earlier, like I remember hearing about this book a lot on like Reddit back in the day. So like the whole edgelord stuff just sort of fits really with that. Every time I just think,
yeah, of course, all the edgelords loved it.
I just think of Wade Watts sitting on r/whatever, just fucking r/circle jerk, just fucking loving life.
Yeah, maybe it's the fact I've had too many interactions with people like that online that it brings back things, and I can't root for them.
It's okay, Michael. Wade Watts isn't real.
He can't hurt you.
James Halliday can't fire you.
She's dead anyway.
He's well dead, fairness.
Good.
I'll crack on to the next bit. So we get a bit of a brief history of Halliday's life, and we sort of get introduced to Ogden Morrow for the first time, who we find out was Halliday's childhood friend who invited him to play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. They sort of grew up together. They found the company Gregarious Games, and then they eventually end up releasing the OASIS. We sort of move back then to Wade Watts, and we just sort of hear all about how he's obsessed with Anorak's Almanac and just like obsessed with all these things, mentioning it and all the 80s pop culture references, and how he's watched Monty Python's Holy Grail 65 times. Yeah. And then it sort of talks about this little limerick about that references this Tomb of Horrors from Dungeons and Dragons. Because, you know, not only has he watched all these movies and read all these books, he's also played all the campaigns of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that is... Mm-hmm. Yeah, a game that is, you know, historically very long.
And he's only 17.
You know, he's only 17, yeah.
So then it just sort of clicks for him. I think he's sitting in his class, and it clicks that the limerick is possibly referencing that this tomb is on the school planet of Ludus. And he ends up actually traveling. He looks at the map and he finds a skull, and he travels there for free because he can't actually teleport himself yet because he's too skint. So he has to pretend he's going to a school sports game, and he can sort of get a free ticket there, and he can sort of walk the rest of the way. And then he enters this tomb. He makes his way through using the sort of D&D guide for this Tomb of Horrors, and he sort of manages to sneak past all the traps and lift all the chests because the guidebooks there just tell him how to get through it. And then he finally comes across, I'm going to butcher this name, I think it's Sararak. He's like
right.
He's like the zombie king of the tomb. And then, you know, Wade Watts is a very low level character, and we think, right, well, how's he going to beat this massive zombie king? And he challenges Wade Watts to a game of Joust, which of course Wade Watts has spent countless hours playing with H in the basement, and he's an absolute pro at the game. So he gets beat in the first game. I think he's on the right hand side, and then I don't know why, but he asks to swap sides. I think he always played on the left hand side when he's playing against H, and then he ends up winning the next two games and beats the Sararak. And out pops Anorak. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm nearly done. Let me finish.
Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
And then out pops a Sararak. You know, Wade Watts levels up to level 10. He gets a clue, the next clue. Once he gets the key, the clues, they sort of go to Middletown, which I think is where Halliday grew up. And then as he's sort of walking out of the tomb after he sort of beat a Sararak, he bumps into someone at the tomb entrance, and that's where we'll leave it. Stephen, you were about to say something there. I'll let you just go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say with Joust, I think the reason that he wanted to play on the left was because I think, well, first of all, I think this is one of the references that I looked up, right? But I think if you're the first player, you play as like one type of animal, and if you're on the second player, you play as a different one, and they sort of behave differently. Do you know that sort of way? So he's more used to playing with the other one, so he switches.
As I say, I thought he played on the left because he always did that with H or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, well, would you like to just give us your thoughts on those sort of few chapters, Stephen? Or
Sure, yeah. So I think there was a lot of faffing about to actually get to the tomb. I don't think it was necessary that they had to explain about the school football game or whatever that it was. Was it Quidditch? I can't remember. Some sort of like fantasy sports game that the school was playing that he was able to get a ticket for. I think they could have just fast forwarded to him being there, maybe. But then at the same time, there was a lot of tension building there, so maybe it was a good thing. I can't remember. But yeah, the actual like getting through the dungeon and stuff, I think I would have preferred more of him actually like, you know, combat and stuff rather than just, you know, describing himself, you know, smoking the whole thing. But the actual challenge itself, I think was okay. Yeah, it's fine. I liked it.
Good. Johnny, Michael?
Yeah, like I liked, obviously, that's the most of the start of the book was, you know, him being unable to like travel because he didn't have enough money, and he's just been a very low level, and like, you know, he gets a lot of stick from, you know, the people in that when he goes to the basement and stuff. And then to obviously be the first one to solve a challenge, and he gets like a lot of money and endorsements and stuff off it or whatever. I just think it was such a an interesting thing just to go from nothing to like being, you know, probably the most popular person in this, you know, whole environment. I like the fact that, yeah, like you had this whole thing about how the hell is he going to beat this? Like, he's sitting there worrying about this, fighting this high level character, Serac. Like, he just knows, like, it's like, you know, even if I was like level 50 or whatever and had the best gear, it'd still be quite a tough challenge. And then it just turns out to be playing him at, you know, a little arcade game. I thought it was quite a funny twist.
Yeah.
I do think, like, although, yeah, I agree with what you have all been saying, that he is a bit of a Mary Sue, and, like, he just seems to always, like, have the answer or no. I think it is funny that, like, the first puzzle has been on the only, like, planet that he's been able to visit this whole time, and he hasn't found it until now. So even though, yeah, for all the other things, he just all of a sudden whoops up. I mean, this did take him 5 years to find out this thing, even though he was one of, you know, however many people actually go to school on this planet, you know, but some small percentage of the actual total OASIS users, you know, he had one of the best chances of finding it because he goes to school on that planet, but yet it still took him ages. So at least, you know, it's not always like he just whoops out the solution out of nowhere. Like, this one did take him 5 years. Yeah, I know this is kind of interesting. Like, I like then, you know, this is when you first get the whole thing with the scoreboard, and the scoreboard was quite, like, heavily, you know, talked about, and, like, it's kind of how you tell how other people are doing and stuff. So they're always, like, I think, like, he always has it, like, open. Like, you know, when you're in the OASIS, you can have, like, different browsers, like, on your side peripheral view or whatever, and he always seems to have it open, and it's kind of like how he tracks other people. So, like, I kind of like the idea of, like, it kind of creates this urgency. Like, it's like this kind of static board, and then all of a sudden he looks again, and then someone's, you know, increased in points, and he knows, oh shit, they're gaining on me or whatever. I kind of like the whole idea of that. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this kind of finding the or when he gets the key and stuff like that. And then there's what I didn't really understand, I guess, until now, was that, like, once you get the key, you then have to solve, like, another riddle to get to the gate and then beat another challenge. So it's actually more like there's 6 rather than there's 3 things you have to beat. There's, like, 6 things. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that was obviously led to a longer, better story in terms of having more to do. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
It's good. Michael?
Yeah, I don't have too many issues with this segment, except I do think this is the part I was referring to in my summary, where he lists the endless things that he's done. But I've already talked on that. I think that Jonathan raises a good few points. I think the little twist where they play the arcade game when you're expecting this standoff, it was a satisfying way to do it. Just the fact that Wade also tells us at that time that he spent an entire summer with H playing this game makes it a little bit less satisfying, but it's still pretty alright. And what Jonathan said too about, like, the scoreboard creating a sense of urgency throughout the story, I think that is something good the story does. It does pace itself pretty well, you know, for all the issues that I do have with it. It's a breezy enough book. It's never a slog, you know. It was always pretty quick. It was just that I was rolling my eyes through a lot of the quick moments.
That's fair. I think the dungeon section is probably one of my favorite chapters in the whole book. I really quite enjoyed that, listening to it, and I was quite disappointed to see it didn't make the movie. I think the arcade games make sense just purely on, like, the 80s pop culture hype that the whole book's on. I think, like, an arcade game challenge makes sense when it's like a video game sort of Easter egg hunt.
Oh, an arcade challenge at the end of a D&D dungeon, like, I mean, come on. Be more 80s.
Exactly.
And then the first gate as well, be more in the 80s.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the stronger sections of the book. I don't really think I have much more to add from what you lads have said, but I was quite enjoying myself by this stage. Anything else, or we crack on to the...
Just because you touched on the film there, I think I don't know why they decided to do a race as the first challenge in the film, but I thought it was stupid, because that would definitely have been figured out way before then.
Somebody would have definitely would have. Yeah. I think the reason they did that, Stephen, is I think it's just more visually interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it annoys me because someone would have figured it out.
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely spot on.
Somebody would have figured that out in, like, an hour.
It's a good way of, like, cramming in all these characters and things they can reference, like King Kong, etc., you know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I actually liked the race. I did think it was quite visually entertaining, but I was disappointed that it was not the dungeon.
Oh, I like the scene, but because I think I saw the film when it came out and then read the book. I liked the scene, but then finding out that it was different from the book annoyed me. So.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact like playing a video game wouldn't be like as good visual storytelling.
Oh yeah,
so
no, I sort of get why they did it, but pick a better thing.
Grant, I'll crack on and move on here to the next few chapters. So as I sort of touched on before we went into the review, or went into that sort of section, was that I bumped into someone at the entrance of the tomb, and this person turns out to be Artemis, who of course Z has a crush on. She tells that she's been coming here for weeks trying to beat the boss, whose name I've forgotten already, who's trying to beat them. It's Sarah Rack, thank you. Trying to beat them for weeks on Joust, and they're sort of asking how Z got on, and they're like, yeah, didn't beat them, and then Artemis ends up looking at the scoreboard and actually sees that Parzival's been lying to them. But then just as Parzival's about to leave, he gives Artemis a wee tip just to play on the left hand side. Once he gets a tunnel, he gets like a spam of, like, he gets his data back and he gets all these messages and phone calls, but he decides to ignore them and just go straight on to Middletown to follow the clue. And once he's there, he sees that Artemis is actually now on the scoreboard and realises that someone's, on his tail, essentially. He ends up in James Halliday's house. He loads up this computer, I think it is, or a gaming console, TRS-80, and he plays a game called Dungeons of Daggerath. Of course, he's mastered this over the years due to being on the almanac.
He's played it 476 times.
And then he inserts the copper key. He then gets transported to this movie, which I've actually never watched. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen it, but a movie called War Games, starring Matthew Broderick. And for whatever reason, it's designed that Parzival has to essentially be Matthew Broderick's character in War Games. He has to sort of copy the dialogue, which he does, and he completes it, and he gets the first gate. He finishes the first gate. He awakens, they sort of see that Artemis has also cleared the first gate, and then he's reading through the news channels like he's like the most famous person on the planet at this stage. And he sees Ogden Morrow's just on saying like, don't be working with the Sixers. And then we finally just get a little bit of more information on Og, Halliday, and I think they finally mention Og's wife Kira for the first time. And maybe they have mentioned it earlier, but okay. We get a bit of information just about that relationship between the three of them and on Kira's death. And finally, Wade rings back H, who is standing outside the Tomb of Horrors. And again, Z just gives him a wee clue about playing on the left. And that's us. That's the sort of the aftermath of the Tomb of Horrors. So how did we all feel about the War Games scene specifically? I think that's probably the most eye-roll moment for me in those sort of few chapters. But
few annoyances with this, but Artemis, I think a few times in this book Artemis would have been a better protagonist. just the way she handles herself, I think, is much more protagonist-like than Parzival. Also, I feel like she got cheated a couple of times because she was so far ahead in a couple of she was robbed. Anyway, what was I going to say? So the main gripe that I have with this bit is how H was able to figure out the whole limerick just because Parzival did it first, and that it must be on Ludus was mind-boggling for me. I was like, I mean, that's bullshit. Like,
because he's per,
if it was that easy, huh?
Because he's per. That's the reason why he knew he was still on Ludus.
I know, but it's just that he figures everything else out, and he's able to do the whole, scan the planet crap that Parzival did in the first place and be there. It was just so stupid. I don't know why. Well, I suppose it had to be like that so that he could set up him as like the third member of the whatever. But it just really annoyed me. But yeah, then the War Games scene. I know at least one of you is going to say about the how he's watched the film so many times and he knows the full dialogue. But I have that ability as well with watching something like once or twice where I can just rhyme it off. So it's a thing. So I didn't connect with it at that point, which is interesting. I've not seen War Games, but it sounds interesting. The Dungeons of Daggerath thing, I mean, it was fine. Like, no issues with that.
Michael, Johnny?
Yeah, like I like the whole thing of Artemis, like, you know, being the first. Like, I like the fact that she was like the first person to actually solve it, like actually figure out where it was. Like, it wasn't Percival. So it's like, I think like he's only good because he's pure brute force, like practiced and watched these things 5 billion times and whatever. Whereas she's, you know, obviously she hasn't done that, but she's just got this natural intelligence of solving these things. You know, I just think it's basically the Lionel Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo kind of thing. You know, it's practice against raw talent. But I do like, you know, that he's like fancied this like girl, like her online presence, or like I think it's like blog posts or something she does. And then all of a sudden, like, he meets her kind of unexpectedly at this, like, just after this challenge. I think probably my main problem with this book, like I said, I really enjoyed it, but I think what I don't like is kind of like the whole, or where the romance goes, you know, between them. I think it is hard to do, like, a good romance in, like, these kind of books, but, like, I think it started well. I think, like, you know, just giving her the wee tip was just, like, a nice kind of wee thing to do and, like, kind of get the relationship going. I don't like then, you know, maybe going on the further chapters, but where, you know, he's ready to just give up the whole challenge just to be with her and stuff. Like, I hate that kind of, that took that turn. I actually kind of wished it was more like the other way about, where he was just so invested in solving the challenge that he was, you know, kind of would have thrown her away for it. Like, I thought that would have been more interesting. So I didn't like that, but like, I mean, I've guessed like you always kind of need to have some kind of romance elements in these things. I like the challenge for this was like to do this reciting a movie. You know, it's something that, you know, quoting movies and stuff. Like, I'd say, like, I mean, again, like he probably has watched whatever number of movies and how many times and can do this with many movies. I'd say the only movies, and I probably obviously couldn't do it the whole way, but like Lord of the Rings is the only thing like probably seen that many times that I would be confident in knowing maybe about 80% of the dialogue. I think that's quite an interesting challenge, you know, just to have to go through that movie. I don't like the fact that this comes up again, the same challenge. You know, it's kind of like, you know, once you've done it this once, kind of, all right, do something else for the next one. But I'm pretty sure he has to do this challenge like a couple of times, like the same type of challenge, where he has to like do this dialogue and copy like some movie or show or something. But no, I thought it was quite an interesting concept anyway for this first time round, that being the challenge. Yeah, I've never actually seen War Games, but yeah, it's talked about quite a lot in this. I'm pretty sure it's like him and H like argue about a couple of movies, and like they were arguing about this one before, so it was like a bit of foreshadowing before this. So at least, you know, they did kind of mention that he did really like this movie, so at least you kind of justify that he's seen it that many times in that case. But yeah, I thought that this was an interesting section as well.
Yeah, I thought the introduction with Artemis was a good place to take the story. I think it added some intrigue and it added that element of urgency, is the word Jonathan used for the last segment. And bringing up the scoreboard, making him a celebrity. It's a wee bit of a silly thing, but it's something that I could suspend my disbelief for on this occasion. And as like the Sixers, this governmental bad guys who go into the game, again, it's a bit silly, but I could suspend my disbelief and just enjoy it for that. My big issue with this, which I think you already alluded to, Jason, I do not like the War Games part at all. I think that is a very, very disappointing challenge just to act out a movie. I just think it lacks creativity big time on Ernest Cline's part.
And it's not even the first time. It's not even the only time he does it.
Yeah, I know. It's as Jonathan mentioned, it's not the only time that challenge actually happens, that type of challenge. There's later Monty Python and the Holy Grail gets recited. Just feels very lazy to me. It just feels like he could not think of something better or something more creative in that moment.
Well,
I think
you have to remember the whole book's laid out like that, though. Like, you know,
yeah,
I'm not going to say stealing, but he's like taking content from other sources. So I mean,
yeah,
there's a theme. if I'm doing
Yeah, and I think, like, if this, like, he said, and his original kind of pitch for this, he said Willy Wonka, and of like video game, and Willy Wonka has of like this theme, like where Charlie is always the selfless one among all these like selfish children, and there's just no like, there's no theme really to these challenges. It just proves that has the best memory and he memorized the most. Like it doesn't say anything about his character, which I think is what you want to do with these challenges. I think that's the opportunity you want to convey, and I think the movie did that slightly better, but I still don't think the movie did a great either.
I think the movie didn't do much great, to be honest, but
I liked the movie, but I mean, well, I've only seen it once, like when it came out. So.
Yeah, that's my thoughts on that part.
Oh, that's grand. Thank you very much. So yeah, I'll get through the next few chapters. So we then see that H has sort of cleared the first gate, and then the aforementioned sort of bully, IROC, starts to sort of slabber online that like he knows H and he knows Parsifal and he knows they attend the sort of school on Ludus. And then like people, like some of the Gunters start to pick up on this, and then eventually we see two more names pop up on the scoreboard. And this is two characters called Daito and Shoto. Wade sort of sorts through all his emails that came in finally, and he seems to be getting like an email every day from the Nolan Sorrento and the Sixers, so he finally agrees to go meet them. He meets Sorrento in the Oasis, and they're offering him the work for IOI, and like Wade's being the absolute edgelord that he is just like trolling him, for lack of a better word. Like he's sort of taking the piss out of him a wee bit. So I think this Sorrento like gives him like two actually very generous offers to begin with, but then Wade's just like nah, no chance, lad. And then Sorrento started offers just like, right, well I know you're Wade Watt and this is where you live and this is your age, and pulls up a video of where he's living at his aunt's house, and he's like, I'm going to blow this up if you don't help us. And Wade just thinks, nah, he's lying, he won't do that. He just logs himself out of the Oasis, and like there's nothing, and he's like, yeah, it's grand. And then there's a big explosion. His auntie and all the people in the stacks are dead. He then logs back into the Oasis to see that the Sixers are all coming to Ludus, and they decide to have a secret meeting between the top five, or the high five, I think they end up getting called, in this basement chat room. And it just sort of talks about like the Sixers' efforts to sort of protect the Tomb of Horrors. Now Wade sort of tries to say like, should we all do this together? Like this is what just happened with me and Nolan Sorrento, and how he's just essentially tried to kill me, but they all sort of decide to go solo for some reason, despite this.
Greed, mostly.
Agreed, yeah, essentially. So then Wade sort of flees to Columbus to get the best Oasis connection, because he's now got money. I suppose I think he got money. I think he got like some endorsements from being the first name up. He changes his name to Bryce Lynch, and that's where we leave things on that sort of end. So I would just like to sort of say that I actually really liked the scene between Sorrento and, well, I like the tension built between Sorrento and Wade in the sort of meeting together. I did again find it quite annoying that Wade was just so arrogant, but I think he actually sort of, well, I think Nolan done him dirty. I think Nolan had the last laugh in that regard, so I thought it was okay. A few chapters.
I like Sorrento as villain.
Yeah.
Even more so in the book because he's played by what's his face? Ben Mendelsohn.
Ben Mendelsohn, yeah.
Class.
Yeah.
I thought these were a few good wee chapters, definitely. So who would like to give their thoughts next?
Yeah, I did not have too much of an issue with these collection of chapters. I thought they were pretty good. I moved the story along nicely. I thought that I think logical sense that they split up based on the way we know the characters anyway. I thought that they're kind of all mistrustful of each other just still at this point. I think they team up a lot easier in the movies, don't they? I think it's better in the book that they have this level of mistrust, because I mean these are all online. You don't know who these people really are, so it kind of makes sense that they're just not ready to team up just yet. The meeting between Wade and Sorrento, I would agree with you, Jason. There's good tension there. It's a good moment, but at the same time, part of me is just like Team Sorrento, because Wade is just a little punk ass bitch here. But but yeah, it was a pretty good collection of chapters. The story moves along nicely here, I'll say that.
Johnny, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, like, agree there. Like, I think with what you said, like, I really enjoyed this part. Enjoyed the meeting with Sorrento. Like, I just loved how, you know, I think it was a bit predictable, and like maybe that's kind of what I actually liked about it, like how I knew it was going to happen. But like, you know, that Wade walked in acting like the big man, and you just knew like he was being a bit of a dick, like. Whereas, but obviously that was funny because this was against, you know, the ultimate, you know, Dick was the leader of the Sixers, so he's like walking in like the big man and be like, just came on the pure, like, you know, lead him on, and then just at the last moment just turn around and was like, nah, you're right. And then it turns out that Sorrento obviously had planned for this, and that he then, like, you know, starts to actually threaten him with, like, they actually kill him in real life. I think like the whole element of like the Sixers actually like going to the lengths of killing someone in real life just, you know, adds to their badness, because like before that you're just kind of like, oh, they're just this like online presence that are just some kind of like secret online organization or whatever that are just being dicks. But like this has actually added some evilness to their like to their whole thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed like this. I'd probably say it was probably one of my favorite chapters of the whole book, the whole meeting with Sorrento. But yeah, I don't have anything other than that to say. Yeah, again, just enjoyed this. I think obviously Michael saying there that Wade kind of being a bit of a bitch here, like, and stuff. I like the whole the fact that, like, you know, Wade just kind of like, you know, weighs up his options in his head. Is like, if I help them, they're probably just going to kill me anyway, so it's probably just better to get, you know, to die. I think at one point in the book he says that like if the Sixers really won, he would just like jump out his window in real life, like, and kill himself anyway, which is a bit drastic, like. But I think obviously his whole world is in this oasis, and if the Sixers win, you know, they'll just take it all over, basically, you know, giving him no reason to live. So I just like it then when he just turns around, he's just like, no, you know, kill me. If you're going to kill me, do it, you know. And then, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say calls his bluff, because he actually did blow up like his auntie's trailer and stuff that night. He just didn't know that he wasn't there. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this whole part.
That's good. Stephen, anything else to add? Or
I don't have much to add. I would agree with what the guy said there, mostly. I mean, yeah, the Sorrento meeting was pretty sweet. I just like that he had him checkmated at every stage, you know, where he offers him one thing, he says no, he offers him something else, and he's always got like a backup, which I really liked about the character, or well, about the situation, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good. I couldn't stop picturing Ben Mendelsohn, so.
I hadn't watched the movie by this stage, so I hadn't pictured Ben Mendelsohn yet, unfortunately. Would have helped things. But no, I thought it really helped to sort of to showcase the sort of power of the Sixers and IOI and Sorrento as a sort of evil presence in the book. So things take a bit of a turn after all this sort of doom and gloom of Wade's family getting blown up and him having to run away, where he just spends the next wee bit just falling in love with Artemis and just doing those wee side quests and kissing and holding hands and dancing at Og's birthday. And then he decides to tell Artemis that he loves her, but she freaks out. I was like, you don't even know who I am. Like, where's virtual? You know, you've never even seen what I look like. And then just after that sort of big row between them, the Sixers actually attack, trying to kill them in this sort of PvP area. There's like a bit of a fight, and then Og, I think, just wipes the Sixers out, essentially. And then Artemis just runs away and leaves them there. So Wade's obviously quite depressed after this, and just decides to get in shape for some reason. He buys himself a haptic suit, and he builds himself like this big stronghold in the Oasis as well to sort of keep himself safe. But he's not really having much luck with any of with Artemis or H. I think between like hanging out with Artemis all the time, he sort of ignored H, and now that Artemis is ignoring him, I think H wasn't really speaking to him much either. But then he ends up sort of hanging out with Daito and Shoto, and does like I think it's a Japanese themed quest with them to sort of get the Ultraman power up. And then after that, after these sort of chapters of Wade just messing about and not really paying attention to the quest at all, he looks at the scoreboard and sees that Artemis is sort of taking them over as number one because she's found the Jade Key. So yeah, I think those few wee chapters, just like it was essentially just like a side quest itself in the book, really. We just took a sort of pump the brakes on the actual Halliday's quest, and we just sort of got a bit of character development, I suppose, if you want to call it that. Like we just got the very like this sort of just full chapter of Wade and Artemis just sort of hanging out and boyfriend girlfriend seemingly, and then they just break up in the next chapter. It was very short lived. To just sort of go to like within about a few chapters has gone from like, oh my god, my family are dead, we should work together, to everyone's like, nah, solo, and then no one's speaking to each other, and then the two Japanese lads, Daito and Shoto, are suddenly his new friends. It was just a bit all over the show a wee bit for me in that regard. But does anyone else have anyone find that they enjoyed the section more than I did, or?
It was definitely all over the place. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing for me, but the romance scenes were really cringe and hard to listen to, like I touched on before. Though I feel a wee bit ambivalent towards these sections, because while I don't like listening to them, I have seen this like loads of times from just being online and playing different games and stuff, where a couple people, and they, one of them fancies the other one, spends all their time with him, and then they've sort of got the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really well presented here, because as I've seen it, it is a thing that happens quite regularly from people that spend all their time online. But yeah, very, very cringe, especially that one scene where he's texting her, and it's like, Jesus, am I actually listening to this right now? But yeah, then the side quests with Daito and Shoto, I really like that. I think there were a lot of references in there that struck a chord with me. Obviously, I've talked about Japan before. But yeah, I liked it. As a whole, I liked it, but cringe.
I would agree with you about the Daito and Shoto section there. That was definitely the stronger part of that part. But Johnny and Michael...
The whole Og's birthday was kind of stupid. Like, I mean, why would you do that?
The stupid
why
dance
would he do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, why would he host this party there? Because they're and invite people like that because they're definitely going to get raided and not have security or something. Come on, you're better than that.
In the PvP era.
Can you imagine going to a party in like Metaverse or something? It just sounds terrible.
I know. It's never going to catch on, Zuckerberg, if you're listening.
Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Stephen said. I think there's a lot of cheese in this section. A couple of you have already discussed the romance. I haven't really touched on it yet, but I do think it is a bit of a problematic romance, to say the least. I think there's a lot of stalkery tendencies to Wade, but that's probably par for the course from the fact that he's learned about romance from 80s movies. I think that the party is really cringe. I don't think that is... It really stretched my disbelief to think that you'd have a party inside the OASIS, but I know this is a movie all about people living in a virtual reality, so I kind of forced myself to suspend my disbelief, but yeah, I still felt the bits of cringe knowing that these were like avatars dancing with each other and socializing with each other.
Though. Like, I've seen it playing World of Warcraft, it does happen.
Right.
Go to Gold Share on a RP server, and you'll just see all sorts of debauchery.
Right. Okay.
Just filth. Don't go there.
Well, that does make me feel slightly better about it, to know that it really is a thing, because it was really stretching my disbelief there. But
it is as cringy as you imagine it to be.
Yeah. The attack, yeah, it's a good kind of way to inject another kind of disaster point in the book. It was due another one to feel the Sixer presence, and then the Daito and Shoto storyline was a good kind of divergence. I don't think they're the greatest developed characters. They're a little bit cliche, talk about honor a lot, and they're a bit two-dimensional feeling, but I think I like the little side quest. I like that it did that in the book. I think taking a breather in a book like this is sometimes needed. So yeah, overall I thought it was pretty muddled, pretty mixed.
Johnny, have you anything else to add, or?
Oh yeah, like I like the fact that it took this detour. Like I think it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of conveying that he was a bit lost. Obviously, bit more or less the only two actual friends he had was Artemis and H, and he, like, you know, pushed them both. Well, I mean, he obviously didn't mean to do it with Artemis. He didn't mean to do it with both of them, but he kind of inadvertently pushed them away. And then, you know, he just had nowhere to go, no one else to turn to. And then Shoto and Daito were the only two other people that he kind of knew. It just shows you he just kind of like is obviously craving the social element of this. I'm sure he's a pretty lonely guy in real life, so he, you know, kind of just clings on to whoever he can get on. So like I did like that's kind of showing that side of him. And then obviously the actual going on these quests, it kind of took you away from the although their ultimate goal I think was to get whatever these powerful artifacts that would help them in the search for the egg. At least it kind of took it away from directly looking for the egg. You know, it was just kind of something different for a wee bit. So I like that. I mean, I've talked about the romance. I didn't completely enjoy the romance. I like the idea of what I think this is trying to get at, is that, like, you know, ultimately it's like him falling in love with someone without actually knowing what they really look like and stuff. So he's actually falling in love with the personality and stuff. You know, obviously that's a really nice kind of thought, but he's just doesn't know how to do romance. Like Michael said, there is a good thing. He's basically just like, all he knows is these 80s movies that he's watched 5 billion times. Like, he's just trying to like be the man standing outside her door with the boombox or whatever. You know, he's very cliched in all his romantic actions.
He does mention doing that at one point, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. But it is like, I guess, like, you do have it with these. It's supposed to be pathetic, but it's just like it's less pathetic and more cringe. Like, I don't feel sorry for him. I just feel like, oh lad, just don't, like. But yeah, apart from the romance, I do like the fact that, you know, he did push them away, and he's kind of had this like falling out with them. It kind of has added this new thing. It's almost like he kind of give up on the egg hunt then because he's just that lost, which I kind of like. It's kind of like the calm before, you know, he gets reinvigorated. I think it's this next part then with the whole what happens to Shite, was it? I think, and then his like whole plan and stuff, then the infiltrate and all, which you'll cover in the next bit. But it's all kind of, this is all leading to that. You know, it's just kind of the calm before that. So yeah, again, I enjoyed it. Apart from the romancy stuff.
You absolutely despise romance in books, in fairness.
Nobody's going to be in love.
It's hard to get it right. I think it's romance is more of a big on screen kind of Hollywood thing. Like, I love a rom-com as much as the next straight white male, like, but it's not. It just has to be well done, like, and it's just hard to do that in a book.
Fair. Yeah, I've sort of made my thoughts clear on this section. So strap yourselves in, lads. This is going to be a lengthy one. So the next chapter starts off sort of giving us a bit of information about some of these artifacts that are quite powerful, that we believe the Sixers may have bought one or both of them. And they talk about this cataclysm, which is like this big sort of bomb that will just wipe out everything in the sector, and Findoro's tablet of finding, which gets used instantly once Artemis's name pops up on the leaderboard that she's got the Jade key, and they're able to sort of track her roughly to where she is, and they track her to this Sector 7, and Wade sort of follows them. He goes to this planet called Arcade, which is just a big video game world, and he sees this Pac-Man machine that's out of order, and he thinks that's a bit weird, and he looks and he sees that someone's like 10 points off the perfect score, because he knows what the perfect score is, of course. And he plays through and just spends, I think it's like 6 hours playing this game, and just gets the perfect score, and then gets this weird quarter that he can't take out of his inventory. He then looks at the scoreboard, and H has now got the Jade key, but H, being sound and sort of paying him back, gives Wade the clue, tells him to go to this planet called Frobos to play the game Zork. I think it was mentioned earlier about this whistle and a Captain Crunch box. I can't remember what exactly the clue was, but he knows that he has to sort of go to this.
The Jade key.
Oh right, yeah, you're right. So he goes to this planet which sort of like Middletown has like a lot of these different identical locations. So like you can be in one house, but someone else could be in another house down the road doing the exact same thing. Percival then managed to beat the game's Zork. He blows the whistle, he gets the Jade Key, he escapes the Sixers, who sort of use their tablet to find the game. They sort of locate where he is, and then sort of war breaks out between the Sixers and the Gunters in this PvP zone in Frobos. Then they sort of see that Shoto's name pops up on the scoreboard, but Daito never pops up. And H and Percival sort of become friends again. We then sort of see Sixers do as they've done sort of previously. They sort of block off these locations of Frobos. They sort of cheat their way, and Sorrento actually sort of manages. They sort of get the Jade Key, completes the second gate, and they finds the Crystal Key, like all sort of back to back. And it's all a bit sort of doom and gloom for the lads. And then finally Shoto contacts Wade to sort of meet them in the stronghold. He says like he wants to give him some stuff from Daito, and Wade's like, what are you on about? Why not just respawn back in? But he tells him that actually Daito was killed by the Sixers, that they sort of broke into his house and threw him off his balcony, and sort of gives the sort of whole backstory that they weren't actually brothers, but they knew each other from like an all-night group for isolated teens, which, I mean, Stephen, you might know better than me, but I think there is like this whole sort of isolation sort of thing in Japan, but maybe that's very, it's a very broad thing. I'm sort of turning everybody with the same brush maybe with that, but
I think he talks about it in this book as like the lost millions or something.
Yeah,
the lost generation. Yeah,
which I think, I think it's a thing in real life at the moment, anyways. But so yeah, then Shoto gives Wade the Ultraman capsule that they all want together. Says that Daito would have wanted them to have it. The sort of next clue was that there was a test. So then Wade realised that this test must be the Voight Kampf test from Blade Runner, and he goes to the Tyrell building. He opens up the second gate, and he has to play like another arcade game. When he finishes his arcade game, he gets like a giant robot as his reward, which I thought was like pretty sick as fuck. He gets this robot. He chooses this robot called Leopardon from Spider-Man, which I think was like it's a robot that Spider-Man used to use apparently. And the next clue,
I love this actually.
Yeah, I bet you did. The next clue, the final clue, was that there was like a 5-pointed star, a red 5-pointed star, and Wade makes this that he knows that this is likely James Halliday's favourite band, Rush, which I will chat about in a wee second. Stephen, you might have the same memories of Rush that I do, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So he knows that he has to sort of go to this Rush planet, I believe, Syrinx, and he gets like the Rush guitarist's guitar, and the Rush guitarist's name is escaping me now. I could probably tell you their bassist, but not their guitarist.
Oh my god, it escaped me as well. Jerry Lee, which was
he's the bassist, isn't he?
Bass player.
I know.
Yeah, he's the bassist and the singer, frontman.
So anyways, he trades your man's
that's
guitar.
fine by me.
He trades the guitar in for the crystal key, and the final clue leads him to Castle Anorak, which is surrounded by a big impenetrable force field, also have the Sixers. And then he sort of like, right, well, I need to think of a plan here. So he lets the other three know how to get the second gate and how to get the crystal key, and he just sort of lets them know he has a dangerous plan, or he mentions he has a dangerous plan. So I know that was quite a lot to cover. Anyone like to chirp in of any of that? Any high
Alex
points, any
Lifeson
low points?
was the guitarist from Rush. Yeah, I think this might be the strongest section for me. So the whole trip to arcade for Percival, I really like that, especially later on. I don't want to spoil it, but the reveal on that, where it's like an Easter egg within the Easter egg game, I really like that. And just to touch on what you said about the Pac-Man high score, I think I can believe that he knows that, because it's not, it's a finite number, and it's a nerd trivia thing. So yeah, I can believe that one. I like the kind of explanations about the glitch level in Pac-Man and stuff like that too. I think that was a really nice touch. But again, it might go over people's heads. What happened then? So then Artemis gets the thing, and they follow her. I'm trying to think.
Sorry, do you want me to go?
What happened next? Sorry.
So Artemis gets the key. H then gets the key. H tells Wade how to get the key.
Oh yeah. Okay. So then he tells him how to get the key about the... I sort of didn't like that, where he gets like a big hint. I would rather he figured it out on his own. Or, like I said earlier, that Artemis was the protagonist. But, going to the house and everything and doing the whole... What was the game again? Zork?
Zork.
Yeah, I think I played Zork way back when, but I can't remember it at all. But yeah, that whole bit was okay. Him gathering all the treasures, or whatever it was, trophies. It was fine. And then, once the Sixers turn up and all hell breaks loose, I really like that part where, all the Gunters are kind of scrambling, sort of thing. Because they know roughly where, or that it's on Zork, so they all kind of swarm these instances of the house and everything. I really like that. The rush bit was fine, I suppose. Again, the fact that none of this big mega corporation, nobody even tried it, was a bit annoying. Yeah, I don't know. It was a good section, but there's too much in there for me to remember.
No, fair. That's my fault. I have sort of threw a lot.
I might come back. I might jump on every now and then when I remember something.
The other sections, and that was obviously Daito's death, and
Daito's death. Again, this is another part that I really liked. I just think it just added something to the world or the story where there's actual real stakes. I mean, we sort of saw it with Parzival's family earlier on, but again, he didn't really like them anyway, so it was kind of it was sad, but yeah. So this one where you can actually the Sixers might actually kill you, it was pretty tension building. Daito not a lifeson. Oh, right. Sorry, just writing in our chat there.
That was a terrible joke. Sorry.
I liked it. That was good. Keep that up.
Michael, Johnny, anything else to add in there? Anyone want to mention about Blade Runner? I feel like you're a big Blade Runner fan, Michael.
I am a big Blade Runner fan, but I don't know. It's just again, it felt like referencing for reference's sake. It just a lot of the references just feel cheap to me in this. Daito's death, yeah, it was a good way to raise tension again and make things have real life stakes, because obviously if they had they obviously did that also with the blowing up on the stacks. And they had to do something like that to make it, because if it had just been, your character was going to be killed, it's kind of a low stakes story. So making them more conniving and evil was sort of necessary. And yeah, that was a good moment for the story. I think there was a lot of playing of games. I think I've played a lot of these games, but not obviously. We didn't have arcades in our area growing up, but I think I played a lot of them in PlayStation or Sega games where you play the old arcade games through those. I thought it was a fine part of the book. I don't have too many complaints about it. I know there's still a lot of 80s references going on ad nauseum at this point, and Wade I progressively turn against him more as the story goes. I just don't really like him as a character. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about that.
Just your hatred of Wade Watt continues. Johnny, have you anything else you want to add in, or you sort of touched on this a wee bit anyways, I suppose, but
yeah, the death of Shaito. Is it Shaito is the one killed? Yeah.
Daito,
right? So the death of Daito, yeah, is I feel like the Sixers had to kill someone to make them, their evilness complete. Obviously, I know they killed Wade's family and all, but they needed to kill one of the main characters, or someone we actually cared about, because obviously Wade's family or his aunt and all, we didn't really. I think they mistreated him or whatever, so we don't really feel too bad for them. So yeah, I think that was it was good to have that in there for one of them to kill. I like the whole backstory about the Shaito and Daito is they're not actually brothers, but they may as well be. They met at this thing and they've just more or less become again through this social platform. Again, I said this at the very start, this is the way it is becoming in real life, where people are making lifelong friends and stuff without even having ever met them, or even people having romances and stuff over online without having actually met each other and stuff. It's just becoming the norm. But yeah, it's quite interesting to have that in there. Do we talk about the infiltrating bit here?
Not yet. No, it's the next section.
Not yet. Okay, the next section, right? Yeah. What sorry, I'm lost. What else do we talk about here?
No one's listening to me, really. we talked about
It's
him.
just been that long since you talked that I can't remember actually the whole thing.
So we essentially talked from the point from, like, they all get the sort of second key, and then Sorrento sort of gets the second key, the second gate, and the third key. And
Oh yeah.
we get the story of Daito, then Wade sort of works out how to get the second key, or how to get to the second gate, and how to then get the third key, which he then retrieves at the end on the sort of Rush planet, the band Rush.
Oh yeah. So I think one of the bits is that he basically Wade starts getting left behind in terms of, like, he obviously he was the first person to be on the scoreboard, and now everyone's taking over him because I think he spent so long on this Pac-Man game. Obviously the dividends of that are to be paid in the future, but like at the time, it was obviously foreshadowed, and something was going to happen, but it's kind of like him spending time. This has now meant that he's wasted time and not. Or he's got taken over, and then the Sixers have obviously, come out on top and are like very close to winning. And I think this is the point I alluded to earlier, where Wade's just like, if they win, I'm just going to kill myself, which I think's just funny. Like, but yeah, like I think the fact that the Sixers, are now like leading the race is like obviously it creates more urgency, and like means that they all have to up their game and stuff. So it's just like kind of getting tighter and tighter in terms of the goal of the challenge, and it's kind of almost like you feel like or like Wade describes that they're like, oh geez, they're so close now. It's like they're certain they want it. Like, it's how can we come back? And it's kind of like that moment, where all hope is lost, but then you kind of have to, leads up to this final battle and stuff of actually beating the enemy and stuff like that. It's a very cliched kind of storyline, but it's it is just good because you kind of know it, like it's done so many times. But yeah, I think the next part we're going to talk about is the whole infiltrating part, is the bit that I'm really excited to talk about. It's probably my favorite chapter of the whole book, or chapters. But yeah, no, this again another solid section. This
good. Thank you very much, Johnny. Just like to announce for our listeners that unfortunately Stephen's had to run on. So it'll just be myself, Michael, and Jonathan for the remainder of the review. Stephen has very kindly left us his overall score, which we can add in for you at the end. Anything else to add for that section, lads? He's happy if we read on? Get to the part Johnny's excited for.
Happy to go on, yeah.
Yeah, so as Jonathan sort of mentioned, the next section is sort of about Wade infiltrating the IOI headquarters. So he essentially just plans on getting himself arrested under his sort of persona, Bryce Lynch. He racks up like credit card debt with IOI, and he gets transported. So I think the sort of punishment for that is essentially you have to work for IOI to sort of pay it back. So he ends up in this sort of prison-like lifestyle, working for IOI customer services, but like staying up all night, sort of working on his plan. They sort of do what he's doing. We don't really know exactly what he's doing at the moment, but we see that he's bought some passwords off the black market, and he sort of hacks the computers with these passwords, and he sort of sees the Sixers' plans to sort of kidnap Shoto and Artemis to sort of help with the final gate. He also witnesses Daito's death, so he realizes he has to sort of escape sooner than he originally planned. I think he had a few more days planned originally. So using the sort of administrator access he's got from these passwords, he's able to sort of escape, get out of the building. He's got his plan in place. He gets back onto the OASIS, and he tells the three of them to sort of leave where they are and get safe. Essentially, the IOI know where they are. He goes back to his original identity as Wade Watts. He then goes back onto the OASIS and meets with his friends. He tells them that he knows that they need to work together to get the crystal key, and he lets them know that the force field is going to fall in the next 36 hours because of his plan. At which point, Ogdemoro, his avatar, so the great and powerful Og, appears in the basement chat room, and they're like, "Oh, how long have you been here?" And he says he's been listening the entire time since Wade first won the first key. He invites them all to Oregon to be safe to his house, which I believe is the Rivendell house that we've already sort of mentioned. At which point Wade Watts finally meets H for the first time and discovers the real identity. They're actually not a white male. They are, in fact, a black female who I believe is also gay. And they sort of get a bit more backstory on H and how they were sort of, well, playing as a white person just for the sort of, to avoid the racism side of things. But then we also find out that they were kicked out of their home by their mum for being gay. And Og then just gives us like a bit of backstory on sort of what happened between him and Haldy and why they sort of fell out together. So we'll leave it there, Johnny. So I'll let you crack on with your thoughts on the sort of breaking into IOI, because I know you're excited.
Yeah. So I think the reason I like this is because it's kind of like the only part outside of the OASIS, you know, where he's doing something like as himself. Everything before this has been him like using these special power-ups or blah blah blah, whatever kind of thing in the OASIS. Whereas now this is just him in person going and infiltrating this place. And, you know, obviously it's quite an interesting plan, because, you know, it's one of those ones where you actually have to get captured and imprisoned. So you're taking obviously a big risk of, like, you know, will you actually be able to get out then? I think you get more as well about the internals of how their organisation works, in terms of, like, you know, whenever someone owes them a debt, they come in and they work it off. But it turns out then that you just end up building up more debt, and you're more or less enslaved there for life. Like, it's just a horrible organisation. So you get more about that, and like the structure and stuff, and how there's the people kind of higher up and stuff like that. But yeah, I liked how his plan unfolded, and how, like, it was like about these like backdoors left in like the software by other people, you know, who basically left them there so, you know, someone else could take advantage of them someday. I just liked how that was a very kind of technical solution. But yeah, I think then him finding out the information, you know, he downloads all the data that they have about their identities and stuff. And I like how he looks at who they are. They see, you know, behind, because he also has to, I think he justifies himself, he has to look, because, you know, he needs to know what they have about each of the people, and ultimately, you know, he can tell them then, here, they know where you live and they've been surveilling you and stuff. But obviously he looks, you know, at Artemis to see if she looks like what she said. I think that she described herself as looking like her avatar, and then he said, yeah, she's the same but with a birthmark. But then he says that he finds her more beautiful because of the birthmark and all that. But I like the fact that he like looked, and then like when he talks to her later about looking, she's like annoyed with him. I just think that's just very typical. Like, but the whole thing with H being, you know, a black like woman is just, I thought it was quite interesting, like twist. Like, I thought that to be honest, I thought he was like going to be a woman, but I think then being like black and gay, it was like the kind of the complete opposite of what I think you're supposed to have had in your head. You're probably thinking, you know, straight white male, so it's kind of like going the complete opposite and just like against everything that you thought this person was. But like then, like, you know, it goes back and it makes sense. Like, it's like, well, I guess she is gay because, yeah, me and H talk so many times about, you know, women and stuff, and obviously he's attracted to women. And then it's also again this thing where they're coming back to the fact that it doesn't really matter what someone like looks like and stuff like that. It's more about this personality, and this OASIS creates that place where you can kind of be anyone, and it's more just about the personality and stuff. I think again that's probably one of the more subtle kind of really human messages in this book, I think. But then I thought it was quite funny the part where, yeah, Og can just like, you know, he has this secret ability that he can just enter anyone's private chat room. Is that like some kind of shout out to say that, like, you know, say fucking Mark Zuckerberg or something can just come on and see your private Facebook chat at any time? Who knows? But I just think it was quite funny. Like, I don't know what, like, if they're just like doing that for fun, or is it some kind of like shout out against some organization or something. But yeah, it was quite interesting that he was just like listening in on them and they didn't even know about it and stuff. I think someone having like this all power like he does in this universe is quite interesting, just this all powerful being, but he kind of only uses his powers when he absolutely needs to. But yeah, no, like I said, I think the main part was the infiltration, and yeah, I just liked it because of the kind of behind the scenes look at the AOA and the actual fact that he has to do all this in person.
Well, we'll get Michael's thoughts before I sort of give my thoughts on that sort of section. But Michael, have you anything Anything else?
Yeah, I thought the IOI infiltration section was pretty interesting part of the book. It was nice to have something different, and having to use a bit more cunning that didn't involve like kind of memorizing a lot of pop culture stuff. So it was refreshing to get that point of the book for me. And I was wondering, did Ernest Cline ever work in a call center? Because I could feel a lot of like anger conveyed in this, and as somebody who's also worked in a call center before, I found it quite funny. Is this the section where we get like the weird mention of like the sex doll as well? Does this happen?
I think I'm not too sure when that's happened. Actually, it might have been.
Or was that?
Or might have been. It might have been beforehand when they broke up. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a very bizarre thing to just drop in there. And there's also like this musing on masturbation too brought on there, which also felt a bit weird to be brought onto this kind of book. But maybe he just felt like he was trying to fully inhabit the teenage boy's mind. But yeah, I thought the IOI section was pretty refreshing, and then we get the meetup, which was interesting. With Morrow bringing them all together, and I've seen a lot of people criticizing the reveal of H being like a black lesbian because of a woman, that there was like no kind of hinting towards that, and it was just Ernest Cline kind of trying to think of the most opposite thing to a white straight male to like add diversity to his story. I didn't have that reading of it as much as I have criticized this book at other points. I thought the twist was fine, so it played an interesting element, as Jonathan said, where you can be anybody you want to be online, and your persona outside of this could be very, very different from the one that you convey through your kind of online world. And as much as I also said that there's a lot of thematic missing points with like the trials and stuff, I think there is good thematic moments with like the camaraderie of people online coming together and being this kind of surrogate family for each other, when a lot of these people clearly don't have families, or for one reason or another. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent section of the book.
It's interesting. Both of you quite like this section. Like, to me, it was almost, you know, those sort of levels in the Assassin's Creed game where you suddenly have to stop being an assassin and you're Hello of the Machine, which I can't remember what you call it right now. You have to sort of run about as like a human character.
Animus,
yeah. I enjoyed it, but that was the sort of feeling to me, like we've gone from like the video game world to the real world. But yeah, something different, something where he actually had to do something rather than just like, oh, I know the answer and I'm so super smart. I mean, I think it's very much the case that he's like able to hack into this probably very, very secure company. But anyways,
yeah,
I think what you sort of touched on there, Michael, about people sort of giving off about like H's real identity not being foreshadowed. There's very little foreshadowing in this book at all. Again,
that's very true. Yeah,
I think the one thing that is foreshadowed we're about to mention in the next section, but like it's just like everything just happens in the moment. You know, there is nothing ever really like hinted at all. So yeah, I think that's just a very thinly veiled way of complaining about the character. It's probably just these edgelords reading the book that are just whinging because it's woke.
Yeah,
more than anything. I thought this was a very, very okay section. It was building up to the final few chapters of this sort of big war. It's about to sort of take place for the final gate. So yeah, it was just good sort of way of just sort of building things up for the final few scenes. And we also got that last wee bit of sort of information about Og and Halliday and why they sort of fell out, and it was all because Halliday was just madly in love with Og's wife. But again, like, yeah, was that just because it was like a girl that took interest in him and he was autistic? But I think that sort of neurodivergent side of thing was also just probably poorly handled as well. So I don't really think we should get too much into that because I'm not the expert on it either. But No, I have nothing else really to add. That was my only thoughts, was the Assassin's Creed reference, really. So,
See, I liked those moments out of the Animus, and I know I'm in a big minority there, but I really missed. That's why I stopped playing those games. I really missed that kind of side plot to it.
you know, that's your
But yeah, I know I'm
one of the few, definitely.
Yep.
Grand. So let's just crack in. We'll get to the final section here, really. So they all travelled to Castle Anorak. They all stood up in their giant robots. Percival's in the Leopardon suit, and like all these other users, all these other Gunters, travelled to the castle to sort of help in the fight, in the battle. I thought it was quite cool that Sorrento's robot was Mecha Godzilla, but I suppose they were the first to choose. So like good choice, definitely. While they're sort of having this, or they're about to have this battle, the robot that Wade's hacked helps with disrupting the force field shield, and they're all able to sort of have this all-out war, essentially. They actually managed, Wade sort of just being his arrogant self again, decides to go back and actually fight Sorrento as Ultraman and defeats him. And just as they're all sort of, the three of them, H, Artemis and Percival, are about to sort of step through the gate, there's just this massive explosion and they all died, which is the sort of aforementioned cataclysm bomb. Cataclyst, sorry. Wade survives, thankfully, due to this quarter he had from the Pac-Man game. So he's the only sort of sole survivor of that. There's some Sixers that weren't in the sector that are coming after him. So he then steps through the gate and he's in the arcade game Tempest, which is something that he was actually not very familiar with for once. So for the final thing, he's needing a bit of help from everybody. So Og and the sort of remaining high five are able to sort of help, and Artemis tells him this sort of glitch which gives him like 40 free tries, because I think he only had one life or something to begin with. So he finally ends up beating this game and he gets transported into the Monty Python, the Holy Grail, which he has to act out word for word, which we know he loves it because he's watched it 65 times. And he finally does that and he gets transported to Halliday's office. And the final thing is he has to sort of guess the password for the computer in Halliday's office. And he guesses it as Lucosia, which was Kira Morrow's D&D character's name. And I think maybe also their avatar's name. He then plays Adventure on the Atari, which I believe, as I mentioned in the first chapter, Adventure was the original Easter egg in a video game. And he plays that and he gets to the Easter egg and he meets Anorak. And Anorak / Halliday tells him about the importance of just living in the real world. And he gives him his cloak and he gives the power control of the OASIS to Wade. And yeah, that's it. So like they're all billionaires now in control of the OASIS. And the final wee thing, which I did think was quite nice, was that Artemis didn't log in and Wade is sort of like told to go meet her in the real world, where they finally meet as real people for the first time and share a wee kiss. And they've no mad rush back to the OASIS. So that's the end of the book. It was the sort of final few chapters, the sort of war and the last sort of gate. Who would like to go first? Share the thoughts on the ending of this book.
I am a bit. There's good and bad in this section for me. The battle was a bit kind of the stuff that I didn't really like about this book. It was more of the references, like somebody was dressed as this character and then somebody dressed as that character shot a rocket and all, and just like did not feel very connected to it. I did feel more connected when he was before he plays the game anyway. That everybody gets wiped out. Obviously, that's just like to leave him as the only one. It was a fairly interesting way to do that. And then he plays the game, and I kind of liked how everybody was helping him, and that he actually had to rely on advice from others for once, and kind of it introduced a bit of humility to his character, and it kind of reinforced that camaraderie of the rest of the team. So it was good thematically in that sense. The big issue I have was, before I actually get to that, him playing the game with the original Easter egg, I thought that was a nice moment too. It's just to like kind of call out to the influences and a nice little bit of trivia within this relentless book to that first Easter egg that obviously played such an inspiration on all future games and this book as well. The problem that I have is the appearance then of Halliday, where, as you said, Jason, he basically says, check out the real world, go touch some grass. But I just don't think that was it. I don't think that was a theme of the book at all. Like, I don't think that was reinforced in any of the previous text. The way, like, again, just to bring up the Willy Wonka, the way that Charlie being a good person was constantly part of that story. It just didn't feel like an earned moment, or that it was part of the book for me. There was moments of niceness in this ending, but also moments that fell flat for me. And the meeting with Wade and Artemis, even though I said I thought the relationship was a bit problematic at times, I thought that was a pretty nice moment then, and I hope hopefully he's a better person, having had to rely on other people for once.
Hopefully. You'll find out in the next book, Michael. Spoilers. He's not. Johnny.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the ending of the book. Yeah, the battle, there's not much else you can say, just loads of robots fighting each other, just very fantasy, sci-fi kind of battle. Yeah, I did like that Sorrento was the Mecha Godzilla. Like, I think then the older Sixers like chose these like robots that like confused together and formed this like mega robot as well. Thought that was quite interesting. I didn't actually know the reference. I think it's some Japanese thing or something. But yeah, that was quite interesting. And yeah, obviously the whole ego thing of, you know, I think he could like fly into the castle and go complete it with the others before, if Sorrento wouldn't even catch him, but he turns around to fight him anyway. You know, his ego got the better of him and stuff, and he just wanted to kill him in the game just because of all the trouble he's caused. You know, it's a dick move or whatever, but I mean, it was, you know, it's that kind of heroic thing that, you know, happens in movies and stuff. Thought it was funny. I think the whole like ideas of the artifacts I really like, and then I like then how the Sixers just like buy up all these powerful artifacts. You know, it's absolute just the way it is in real life, payday one kind of thing. It's quite funny. And obviously you heard about this cataclysm weapon very early on in the book, but you know, it's been kind of foreshadowed until now. Yeah, it's just kind of funny that they literally just get into the thing and then just it explodes. And then obviously you get the payoff of the extra life. I thought was quite interesting, and I think a nice kind of thing of the actual reward of him doing that extra work to beat that Pac-Man game. I thought it was quite cool. The actual, you know, him getting the powers and stuff like that and actually winning. And then I think he's, you know, he does have the nice moment where he's like, no matter what happens when I go into here, I'll share the money with you guys and stuff. And yeah, you have that whole moment with him and Artemis, you know, in real life and stuff. And it's like, yeah, kind of at the very end, more or less like the last sentence is that, you know, they're in no rush to get back to the OASIS. It's kind of like, yeah, the OASIS is great and all, but like, you know, yeah, real life is kind of, you know, make sure you don't get lost in just being in the OASIS all the time. You still have to return to reality and hopefully find joy in reality as well. So hopefully, yeah, I mean, obviously Jason just said, you know, he doesn't become a better person or whatever because of it, but you know, that's what obviously finishing the book, you hope. But yeah, no, I just think it was again a very, very nice way to end the book. Just kind of the good guys won. Just kind of what you'd expect at one of these types of stories. So yeah, it's kind of what I thought.
I'm glad you had a good time with it, Johnny. I thought the fight scenes were good. Like, it was quite entertaining. Like, I suppose that's is how we rate these books. Really, is just on entertainment value and enjoyment value. Really, like, it's what's not to love about like a Mecha Godzilla, giant robots, giant Ultraman fights. You know, just good crack, cast crack. And even though it's a fairly problematic relationship, I actually did enjoy that Samantha and Wade ended up together at the very end. But yeah, like, it's the go touch grass comment from Anorak and just the whole thing. Like, it's, if we ever do go to the second book, like, it doesn't really carry over an awful lot.
Uh,
I like the Cataclysm as well. As I say, it was actually the only thing that was, I think the only thing that was actually foreshadowed in this book whatsoever. So the fact that actually did come to give like a bit of a plot point.
That actually don't have a setup.
I thought it was quite good. But yeah, book's over, Michael. You don't have to relive it anymore. But if no one else has anything else to add, I think we'll just go straight into our star ratings.
Yeah.
Stephen had to leave, as I sort of said earlier, so I'll read out his star rating. I knew Stephen had read the book before, and I knew that he liked it before, and Stephen has given this book a 4 stars out of 5. I would like to think, well, I can sort of guess where Johnny and Michael are probably both going to go with this, so who would like to go first, just to sort of sum up their final feelings and give this their star rating?
I think I'll go first because Michael's will probably be more interesting. Overall, I quite enjoyed this book. I thought it was very easy to listen to. We haven't talked much about Wil Wheaton. There's actually one thing I forgot to bring up about him. Is like there is a mention of himself in this book, which I thought was quite funny. I think they mentioned like Star Trek and like Wil Wheaton playing Wesley Crusher, so I thought it was quite funny that he was reading it. But I think he did a good job. He's got an easy voice to listen to. The book was very easy to listen to in terms of the writing style. I think obviously my problems with the book were probably the whole love interest, which I thought some parts of it were good, just some parts of it were just kind of a bit too much, or just not well done. Yeah, I do agree with the whole him spending so long doing these things and learning all these things. Like, to be honest, like I wish they had maybe the author spent a bit more time and made it more realistic, rather than saying he has watched this movie 65 times. He said, I've watched it 5 times or something like that. You know, just being a bit more realistic about it. Same outcome and effect, but just a bit more realistic. But yeah, and overall, this kind of like had all the references. It was just ultimate like nerd culture, and also there was the programming references, which kind of, myself being a programmer, I quite enjoyed. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
Great, thank you, Johnny. Michael, any chance you're giving it a 4 out of 5? Or
no, not quite up there. As I've mentioned, I've went into a lot about what I didn't like about the book, like the 80s references. That I felt like, not that I don't like things being referential. I mean, especially the 80s. I love Stranger Things. It's one of my top shows, and it's very, very like, it's constantly referring to like the 80s, and it's constantly paying homages to like Nightmare on Elm Street and Terminator and all, but it feels like it does it in a very fresh way. It kind of reskins the plot in its own unique way and puts its own unique spin on it. And I would have appreciated a bit more creativity and a bit more originality from Ernest Cline if he could have done something like that. I think this premise and this idea of like the online, RPG game and where the world is just terrible and all it's a great premise, so it is. And this idea of chasing these keys, everybody involved in this game for years, again, it's a great idea with lots of potential. Just, I think the general writing was quite weak from Ernest Cline. I think if a more talented writer had have had this idea, it would have been a better book. And I didn't connect really with Wade that much as the central character. I couldn't cling on to him that much, and I felt like he was a bit of a Mary Sue. He won conflicts a bit too easily. He just kind of had the knowledge. And as Jason said at the end, nothing was really ever foreshadowed all that well, which wouldn't have been that hard. I mean, another rewrite, you could have added a few scenes here and there to foreshadow things. Obviously, it would have made this a less pacey book, but I think it would have been worth it, and it would have made a stronger story. So with that being said, I am going to score this 2 out of 5. I was thinking, where am I on this? Because what is the middle of the road? Like 2.5. I think I've been more negative than positive, so I do think what I've talked about has been more 2 than 2.5 or 3.
That's fair. I thought you were going to go lower, to be honest. So I'll take a 2.
Oh no, there's books I really, really hate, and no, this isn't. I thought this was easy enough to get through. There's books I find really difficult to get through.
Sorry, Jason, what did you give this, a 4?
I haven't actually rated it yet. but good
Oh,
guess.
have you not? Right, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, like based on pure enjoyment factor, which is how we do rate these books, like I would say this is a 4 out of 5. I still like the book. I like the experience. I also, as I mentioned, have gone ahead and listened to the second book also. And yeah, I just liked it. I think there's a lot of issues. I don't think it's very well written. There definitely are much better books out there. Probably better books that I rated lower, purely just based on that enjoyment factor. I just give it a 4 out of 5. So does anyone want to do some maths? That's 3 4s and a 2. What's that take?
It's 3.5, which makes us this the lowest rated book this year.
Classic. Gone from a title of worst book again.
Sorry, Jason. I think
Michael's lowest rated book.
I think Stephen talked you out of the book that I was going to give 5 in favor of a book he was going to rate that one lower though. So I don't know how that would have worked out.
It's alright. Not the end of the world.
It's all
3.5 still a respectable score.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the sort of book review over. I suppose there's just a few things. I mean, like we could be here all day talking about comparisons to other media because it's just a book that's stuffed full of references. But is there anything anyone's
the
like
book itself as other media?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is there anything anyone's dying to talk about regarding it? Or
I guess like the movie itself. Like I said, I didn't watch too much of it, but I seen that obviously it's more obviously Hollywoodized it. Like the very first 20 minutes, he's already completed the first challenge. Whereas I said I liked in the book where it took him however amount of time. It spent a lot of time on him being kind of poor and very low level avatar and all these struggles he was going through and like the whole school element. I guess it obviously just cut all that out. But how you've seen the movie, Jason? What was like kind of the rest of the movie like?
I hated the movie.
Up to the book or what? Hated it.
The movie does things just very different. I actually liked one of the things is actually like as Michael mentioned, they visit the Overlook Hotel from The Shining, which is interesting up till a point. But I know I really just didn't like the movie at all. I hated the stupid avatars.
Yeah, the avatars. Yeah, they look strange. Like it wasn't really well done. So like it doesn't look lifelike.
Yeah,
I think like the Overlook too. It's like Spielberg paying kind of homage to the things that he feels nostalgic about too, because obviously he was a big Kubrick fan. But yeah, I thought the movie was just okay. Like it was a fun popcorn flick. Not really anything special or anything.
Yeah,
especially for such a director like Steven Spielberg.
That wasn't great. Much preferred the book. If there's any trivia, I haven't looked up any trivia for this again. I'm sure there's probably hundreds of bits of trivia for this, but
yeah, this book is basically like got the trivia on it. It tells us a lot of like the history of games and stuff.
I know. You could be here all day.
That and the book was pitched by like as Willy Wonka does the video game world basically, which as I've said before, I thought it was a great premise.
Yeah, it's a good premise, definitely. It could have been better, 100%.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I think we could keep that very short and sweet. We'll be here all day talking about comparisons to media trivia. So I'm going to choose to keep it short and sweet. So we'll go to the next section of just what we're consuming or any plugs from either of you guys. Watching anything good, listening to anything good, playing anything good?
I'll go first, I guess. So I started watching, I was talking to you, Jason, about this. I started watching that Free Body Problem.
You're saying?
Yeah, so it's produced by the same guys that did Game of Thrones. And I said but they've got, the material has all been written. So obviously when they were doing Game of Thrones by the book, it was very good. And obviously whenever they didn't have any material, they go off, they absolutely wrecked it. But yeah, this is all, I think there's 3 books or something for this. So it's all been written already and they're following the material. But yeah, I've heard really good things. I've watched the first 2 episodes. It's very, obviously, it's very, like, mysterious and stuff. I don't really know what's going on, but there's a lot of physics and stuff in it. A lot of weird stuff going on. There's, like, some kind of police investigation about what's happening, but you don't really, it is all kind of quite confusing at the minute. I'm assuming it's going to be one of them ones where you don't really know what's going on until the last episode. kind of like, you know, the way Westworld was, but obviously the first season Westworld was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm expecting something like that. But yeah, I really like the premise of it so far. I've only watched the 2. I think there's 8 episodes. It's on Netflix. And yeah,
There's a book of that as well, Johnny. Like,
yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
The books. So I think there's 3 books, and one person that I worked with said that the second book was like one of the best bits of literature he's ever read. So yeah, possibly maybe cover the book at some stage on this podcast. I guess I definitely will be going to listen to the audiobook myself anyway. But yeah, watched the first 2 episodes of that. Excited to go through the rest of that. Gaming. So I was over in Glasgow there with Jason, and he said he started watching the Fallout series. I haven't started it yet, but Jason was talking about Fallout and playing Fallout 4, and now I started it. Absolutely stocked it there last week. Playing Fallout 4. Now I've been thinking I might play Starfield. It's Bethesda's, you know, older, most recent game, which kind of got mixed reviews, but I heard that it is quite good. I think it's just very repetitive or something, but to be honest, like, you could say it about most games. Like, the games are just some of the repetitive elements. If the repetitive element is fun, then it's a fun game. So yeah, I might give that a try. I've just kind of playing Fallout 4. It's made me want to play an RPG game more. But yeah, I've doing a lot. I've been doing a lot of programming stuff. But yeah, not really much else. Not much to plug. Just the usual YouTube channel stuff. I haven't released anything in about 3 weeks, but I'm working on the next video at the minute. But yeah, it's just hard to do all these things. Like, but yeah, hoping to get through that. Also an update on. I said I've been reading the physical book. I'm still, unfortunately, getting even worse behind. About 2/3 of the way through the Deep Thinking book, the Gary Kasparov one that I said last time, so I haven't finished it yet. Although it's a small book, there's like, if you look at like, compared to like the other book I have, which is about the same thickness, there's more like words on the page, so I feel like it is like, there's more words in the book, but it's quite an interesting book. It's, you know, all about AA and stuff like that, so I would recommend reading it, specifically as it pertains to like, you know, playing chess and all. But I think like the whole point of it is because like when they were developing AA, they kind of needed something to base, is this intelligent or not? And, you know, being able to play chess, which a lot of people in that kind of field thought, you know, chess is like, a chess player is a really intelligent person, which isn't necessarily true. And like, you know, Gary Kasparov discusses this. It's just like someone, it's like any kind of sport or game. It's just someone that's practiced it a lot and like learnt a lot of the general patterns of it. Like, you don't necessarily have to be a genius or anything to be good at it. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Quite an interesting book, so I'm still reading through that, trying to get through that. I've actually got my next book lined up for after it, which I'm quite excited to read. Is called How to Teach Your Dog Quantum Physics. So it's basically I did quantum physics, I did a quantum theory module in university, so I did a bit of like quantum mechanics and stuff. I never actually really understood the physical kind of side of it. I knew the maths kind of side of it because I was doing a maths degree, and that's kind of, I just knew how to like solve the equations and whatnot. But I didn't really know, you know, what does this actually mean in the real world? Like, what is this theory trying to tell us? So yeah, I just was interested in doing a wee bit more about quantum stuff. There is like an interesting field in computing called quantum computing as well, which could be, you know, the next big thing after AA. You know, AA is the big thing at the minute. If quantum computing takes off, I think that would, I guess then the biggest thing after that would probably be combining them. But yeah, it's kind of the next big field that's been worked on but hasn't emerged. But I'd just like to kind of know a bit about that space, just in case that ever takes off. But yeah, that's kind of everything I've been up to.
Quite a bit, Johnny. Busy lad. Michael, you up to anything, or?
Yeah, I have watched a couple of episodes of the Fallout show. Enjoyed what I've seen so far. I'm watching it with Greta, so when I watch it with her, it's always slower going because we have to get the two of us down together. One that I watched on my own and was able to finish was Baby Reindeer on Netflix. Show a lot of people have been talking about it recently. Don't know if either of you have watched it.
Not yet, no.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's like it's written by Richard Gadd, and he actually plays the lead in it as well. So it's about his life, and he's playing the character, which is kind of mind blowing when you see what he went through and the fact that he would willingly kind of relive that in the form of fiction.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. I feel like I know the main story. So fair play to him, like.
Yeah, fiction, but heavily based on real events from what I've heard. But yeah, it's a really engrossing show. I really enjoyed how honest he was about like his own flaws and his own bad decisions, but kind of makes sense why he makes those bad decisions at times. Just trying to think what else. Yeah, I've written a couple of short stories too, just like first drafts. One called A Happy Life, which if you've ever listened to any of my stories, it's not a very happy life, but it's kind of an ironic title. But then the second story that I wrote after all this talk about AI probably inspired, I wrote my first story about AI, which is called Factory Settings. It's quite a dark story, just a very short story, probably like a 10-15 minute. I don't know if I'll ever get reading those out, just do some redrafting of it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to. There's been a few audiobooks, but nothing I really want to talk about.
Fair. Yeah, I suppose the main thing, as we've all sort of mentioned, is Fallout for myself. I think Johnny mentioned Westworld. I think it's actually made, or at least produced by like Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, the same sort of people that did Westworld. I really enjoy the show. Me and Mary Kate both loved it. So much so that, yeah, I've put about 15 hours in the Fallout 4 in the last week, which is a heavy amount of gaming for me. Like, so. Apart from that, I was watching that TV show Shogun, which I sort of mentioned to Stephen about, but I haven't actually got round to finishing that yet. But it's quite good, mostly in Japanese, so it's a commitment to sort of stick it on, definitely. And like book-wise, I've already sort of mentioned, like I've listened to Ready Player 2, I listened to Silmarillion. I think I might have mentioned that last time we were on the podcast, and that was tough going. It's not like the same as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's very much like a history book, that's how I would sort of describe it. Definitely some good stories in there, but it's very difficult to keep up with. Lots of time jumps and new characters, and yeah, it's good though. There's definitely some strong points, and definitely it's funny enough stuff that gets referenced in Ready Player 2, the sequel to Ready Player 1. So it was weird to go from Ready Player 1 to Silmarillion to Ready Player 2, where they sort of like both books, that Ready Player 1 and the Silmarillion, were obviously both referenced then in Ready Player 2. It was sort of good order for me to read
An
them.
essential trilogy.
And yeah, no, I mean, I'm just getting ready for the wedding, getting ready for the stag, which will be in just over a week's time. So looking forward to that. The time has been released, I might be in a prison somewhere in Europe. So, and as usual, I've no plugs. I suppose one thing is maybe actually plug wise. I mean, I work as a private physio, and actually one of my clients is actually an author. So I thought it might be fun at some stage to maybe take one of their books to this and see what happens. But we'll see how that goes. I might sample it myself first and see what it's like. I've read some of the reviews and it seems generally quite positive, so maybe. But I think that might be my hosting duties over. Time to hand it over to yourself, Michael.
Yeah, and after trashing this book, Jason, you can get revenge on me for whatever I choose next. So was thinking what the frame of mind I was on. I went through a lot of different books over the when I was thinking about what I was going to pick next, and I was edging on something darker, but like there's been some like personal stuff over the past month. Probably not in the right headspace to read something dark at the moment. So going to one other thing that I looked back on in the podcast, I've mentioned before, like we've not really done many literary books. Blood Meridian and All Quiet on the Western Front's probably the only two that would really belong in that category. So I was thinking, and one thing that I did recently was like, I remember reading a comment that was like how a lot of literary books, they say different things from when you're like 18 to when you're like 30. And one example they used was The Great Gatsby. So I revisited that book as in my 30s now, and I thought it was like a kind of a cliche that like literary people say about these books, but it was absolutely true. It said something completely different to me all these years later, having read them. And I read a lot of the literary books on my own when I was like 18, 19, because I thought that to be good at writing, I would have to go through a lot of the best books ever. But I have like fond memories looking back at those books now, and there's a lot I want to revisit. So I'm probably going to do that the odd time for the podcast. So the book that I'm going to pick is a book like that. I was thinking about probably the funniest book that I've ever read. I would even put it above Hitchhikers. And there's probably people listening to this podcast who know what that book is, but I'm probably going to save that for a different time. The book that kind of has been calling to me is a book by Harper Lee. It's called To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a very famous book. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, because it's one that's commonly done in school, but
No, never
it's one
did.
that I have not read since... Yeah, it's one that I haven't read since I was 18, 19, so I would love to revisit it and see kind of what it says to me now at this age. And I have kind of a real life story that ties into that book too, that I'm excited to tell on the next episode.
Interesting book. I'm quite glad you picked it, Michael. That'll be something different for us. So
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, I also wanted us to, I like pushing us out of our comfort zone every now and then, so while I like a good fun sci-fi and everything, I also like something that's we don't usually cover.
yeah, no, it's an exciting choice.
I'm excited to hear Stephen's thoughts on that book. I can't imagine how like that. But yeah, so next episode, To Kill a Mockingbird, trying to class the place up a bit.
Happy days.
Good stuff. See
See you on the
flippity. Bye.